grace, you could say, from compared to where I was 25 years ago. I'm much more, I'm on a plateau. Sure, I still get depressed once in a while. Sure, I still have problems and challenges to overcome. But I manage to embrace them on a higher level. So that's what all our relationships need to do. So I'm not saying, when I say we need to embrace the other person, that we need to sacrifice our individuality to a relationship. Far from it. Too many of us did that too many times. Yes, girls? I remember reading Little Women when I was a teenager. And Joe was the one who was engaged to the guy next door, right? His name was Lawrence. I can't remember. And she was sitting there in the sunlight writing her name, Mrs. Lawrence, whatever it is. And whenever I had a boyfriend, I'd write down Mrs. Jim Brown. I didn't even know what my name was going to be until I knew which man I was going to be attached to. We don't do that anymore, but that's... But we did that. We sacrificed ourselves to the relationship. We took up what he was interested in, or she, and that's fine to have some interest, but we don't need to give up who we are, and that's what I caution people getting married about all the time. I used to have friends, they named Leonard and Connie. You've probably got a Leonard and Connie in your life. Leonard wouldn't let Connie have a job. And Leonard wouldn't let Connie go out in the evening with her female friends because, you know why he wouldn't let her? Because he loved her. And he wanted her home, right? That isn't love. That isn't love. We mustn't sacrifice ourselves to the relationship, and we mustn't request anybody else to sacrifice themselves to the relationship. It's coming to love who we are. So when we say we expand our ego boundaries to encompass the other person, we don't draw that person into our own little circle of ego. It was an analogy that went around a few years ago about a person joining a community, and he was withdrawn and wouldn't come and sit in the circle. So the way that people handled that was they just expanded the circle until the circle went out to him. The other one where people were sitting in a circle having food, and they had a pot in the middle of food, and they all had very long spoons that were too long to bring back to their mouth. And sometimes, they starve to death until they learn to take their spoon and feed the person opposite them. So that's what a circle is really all about. Love means accepting without trying to change or control a person, whether that's parents or children. Anybody here ever tried to control their children? And that is true even if the other person seems to want to be controlled. We've met some very passive women who want their husbands, they never learned how to write a check and all that stuff. Even if they seem to want that, it's our responsibility to not control people. Because our teaching, there's the analogy of you can give a man a fish, you can teach a man to fish. Or we can go one step further and remind people that they already know how to fish. See, that's what we're up to. That the power and the wisdom is already within you. I don't stand up here and tell you what the truth is. I stand up here and make some suggestions, and if that works for you, you use that to investigate your own truth. We don't want to control anybody here. We don't have a lot of rules and regulations and dogma. It's about who you are. There was a story of a man who asked his mother, he still lived at home, and he asked his mom, he was kind of whiny one Sunday, "Mom, do you think I should go to church?" And Mom wouldn't tell him. She refused to tell him whether he should go to church or not. "Mom, do you think I should go to church?" Finally, she said to him, "Son, there's 2 reasons why I think you should make up your own mind whether you're going to church or not. First reason is you're 36 years old. The second reason is you're the minister of the damn church." So, even when somebody seems to want to be controlled, it's their best interest to learn to look after themselves. When I do weddings, I often read from Khalil Gibran, and this is the section on marriage. Love one another but make not a bond of your love. Rather, let it be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. Fill each other's cup, but drink not from the one cup. Give each other bread, but eat not from the same loaf. Sing and dance together and be joyous, but let each one of you be alone, even as the strings of a lute are alone, though they quiver with the same music. Isn't that beautiful? Give your hearts, but not into each other's keeping, for only the hand of life can contain your hearts. And stand together, yet not too near together, for the pillars of the temple stand apart, and the oak tree and the cypress grow not in each other's shadow. So the pillars of the temple are at the four corners. If they were all clustered into the middle, the temple would collapse. And if the oak tree and the cypress grow together, too close together, they will kill each other, because they can't grow in each other's shade. And that's how we need to look at our relationships, whether they're romantic relationships, whether they're with our parents, whether they're with our children, whether they're with our friends. We talked last week about different kinds of relationship. There's affectionate relationship, there's romantic relationship, there's friendship relationship, there's familiar relationships. But within each of those kinds of relationships, there's degrees of need, love, gift, love, right? Anybody ever have a needy friend? Oh, yes. Or a needy relative? Yes. Needy is the stuff of a bad country song, right? Can't live without you, baby. You make me happy, baby. No, nobody makes you happy. There's nobody you can't live without except yourself. On the other hand, gift love is the kind of better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. The gift love just wants happiness and peace and love for the beloved. Right? And that's what allows us to share in somebody else's joy, somebody else's happiness. I just want for you to be happy. That's gift love. And of course, there's a whole continuum all along the way, right? From the most needy to the most freely given gift love. And it's really interesting to watch where we are. And that's really what this teaching is all about, is coming to terms of awareness of where we are. It doesn't mean blaming ourselves and judging ourselves and making ourselves guilty, but just saying, oh, I see. In this relationship, I come off as kind of needy. Do I really need to? And then you become to choice with whether you want to continue to be that way or not. But if you don't even know you're needy, can't change it, can we? So it's all about self-discovery. Earnest and all those kinds of love, the need love, gift love, but all kinds of love too are better when there's a spiritual element to them. A romantic love, if we can have a romantic love that's somebody that's on this path in a similar place with us, how jealous are we all of those people, right? And of our friendships, if we can see the divine in our friends, behind your tears, your rage and fears, I see your shining star. And that's taking spirituality into our friendships, into our relationships with our children. The first thing we need to do when we're worried if our child needs discipline or how they're going to turn out or any other thing is to look at them and see the truth of who they are. They're a divine being here. And they've got a purpose and a presence here just as we have. And the size of their body has got nothing to do with the age of their spirit either, right? Some little young children are far wiser than any of us. We need to recognize that in our children. Ernest Holmes says that love is the self-givingness of the spirit through the desire of life to express itself in terms of creation. So no matter what we're creating, if we're creating a new life in the form of parenting, if we're creating a work of art, if we're singing, giving the gift as Marie does and Rael and Pam do, and Barb, we all have some creative urge. We all have some way to express ourselves. And that allows us to love ourselves when we can find what that is. As you know, I've worked with a lot of young people in theater. And when kids find that passion, what it is they want to get involved with and express, Those kids don't have trouble getting out on the street and getting into trouble because they know who they are through recognizing what their interest and their passion is. So encourage that. So last week we talked about kinds of definitions of love, and the first was that romantic, Valentine-y thing, the intense affection and warmth. Then there's the strong fondness or enthusiasm for. But the one I like best, and to me everything else pales, is that, God's benevolence and mercy towards humans. And our sense of connection with the divine, however we see it. Whether we see it in nature, whether we feel it in music, whatever it is that lifts us up to that plateau experience, there's no other kind of love really in the long term that equates with that. So in February, it's love month, let's try a little harder. Try a little harder to be conscious of our loving natures and the loving nature that's coming back to us. We have a tendency to find what we're looking for. Ever notice that? So if you're expecting people to be angry or bitter or harsh or selfish or greedy or whatever it is, when you expect that from people, you go looking for it. And there's a good chance you'll find it. When you expect people to be joyful and loving and sharing and caring, you're much more likely to find that. So back to St. Valentine's. Got started on St. Valentine, and St. Valentine was the one who originated giving those little cards that we give on Valentine's Day, right? We don't know that much about St. Valentine's. We know that he was a Christian priest who was martyred for being a Christian, that he was jailed, and that from jail he used to send out little notes to people saying, I love you, and remember your Valentine. And in fact, he was known as a healer, and the daughter of the jailer who kept him locked up was blind. And he sent her a Valentine card, and her sight was restored, and the first thing she saw was a yellow crocus on the Valentine card. So in order to be a saint, you have to have miracles, right? So that was his. But he performed marriages at the time when Emperor Claudius had forbade marriages. He used to marry people. So he became a saint. So that's St. Valentine's. Legend has it that St. Valentine's Day is mixed up with Lupercalia. And in the early days of Christianity, of course, there was a great influence of Roman paganism as well. So Lupercalia was a Roman love festival. And in the times of the early church, they tried to stamp out all these pagan celebrations, right? And the way they did that was they merged them with Christian ones. So Emperor Gelasius merged St. Valentine's Day with Lupercalia, which had been on February 15th, in an attempt to stamp out that pagan love festival. Then I guess the church wised up and realized there's nothing wrong with love, right? But when you were a kid, did you hear the word pagan earlier on in your life? Pagan? And it was almost a swear word, wasn't it? Oh, those pagans. But a pagan simply means somebody who finds God in nature. Hello. It makes you wonder how many other words we have judgments about. So we know that whatever we call it, God approves of love. Yes? Would you say so? Because God is love, right? Every faith tradition, I believe, no matter what they call the divine being, no matter how they understand it, no matter what names they give to it, has the teaching that God is love. Emerson said that, but it's true in every faith tradition. We all know that God is love. So we're gathered here to celebrate love, and so we know that God is here, right? There is only God, actually. So our first fundamental of learning to love others is that we have to love ourselves. And that's why I've asked Marie to sing that song each week this month. I love myself the way I am, and that's hard to do. I talked to some of the clients coming out of detox at the Phoenix Center on Mondays, and last week a woman shared with me, and we were really talking about the self-worth, because a lot of people have problems that stem from this lack of self-worth. And she said to me, she was crying, she said, I just don't care about myself. And I said, yes, you clearly do, Because when you tell me you don't care about yourself, you're crying. That's the grief, that you can't care about yourself. And you wouldn't have that grief unless you cared. But you've been taught that it's not nice to care about yourself, right? We all got those little subliminal messages. Who do you think you are, getting too big for your britches, whatever form it came in. And the thing is, I have a quote from Louise Hay. She says, "The relationship you have with yourself and with your significant others is highly influenced by the relationships you had with the adults around you as a child. The way the adults reacted to us then is often the way we react toward ourselves and our partners now, both positively and negatively. Think for a moment of the words you use when you're scolding yourself." You know, our parents did the best they know how to do. So did our teachers and all those people who influenced us. And yes, they said some things that harmed us. They may have done things that physically harmed us. But they did not know any better. If they'd known better, they'd have done better. And if we can go, and maybe we need to go into therapy and deep therapy and uncover these things. Maybe. Some people may need to. I don't think we need to. I think we can go back and revisit those with a different filter. To look for something different in the experience. Not to look for a reason to have not been successful, but to look through it with what would I have been like if I had been my mother, with what she'd gone through in her childhood and what she had to put. How would I have been? With compassion, look at those things that were said to us and hold them in a different light. And then we're no longer at the effect of them. We can be a choice. We can either bring them with us if we like the lesson we learned from them, or we can leave them behind. But we can't do that until we see what they were. And that's the value of your deep inner work, is just seeing what they were. And then you can be free of them. Then you can be free of them. But too often we hang on to those, don't we? As an excuse for the way we are now. This is not an easy teaching. This is not an easy teaching. It's easier to say, you know, my mom did it to me, or my dad did it to me, and now here Jesus bail me out. You know, this teaching says we did it. Not all ourselves. You know, we didn't consciously do it to ourselves, but as a human race, we've contributed to a human race consciousness that has created a reality that we all share. And the only way we can change that is to change the thinking. Keep thinking greater and higher and more loving thoughts into the human consciousness, so that eventually it becomes a new reality here. A new reality. And so the value is in forgiving is so that we can move past, we can get unstuck from that mired history and move into conscious co-creation. As they say in the Centers for Spirit, awakening humanity to its spiritual magnificence. That's what we're really up to. Where am I? So pay attention to the names you're calling yourself. My name is Patricia. When I was a little girl, I was called Patsy. I was always called Patsy, except when my mother was mad at me. And then it was Patricia, right? And I knew something was going on when I heard that. And I do that. When I'm angry with myself, when I'm frustrated at the computer, whatever it is, and I'm talking to myself, I find myself calling myself Patricia. We're all influenced by that. It's so insidious and so there in our subconscious minds. So, this month especially, February, but all the time, try and be more conscious of the love that can give yourself. Try and call yourselves the pet names. What would you like to have been called as a child? Start calling yourself that. I have an idea. Go out to the card store shop and buy yourself a Valentine's card. What would that look like? What would you like to say to yourself? And start saying those things to yourself. Because you do need to love yourself the way you are. Because the way you are is already divinely perfect. You can't be any better than the way you are, because God made you and God didn't make no junk. And you are the way you are in order that you can learn more and grow more and become even more magnificent. Namaste, I'm done.